Good morning on this Sunday, June 20th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang, and a happy Father's Day to all the dads watching. Atlanta's violent crime wave is all over the national and international news as the push to form a new city of Buckhead intensifies. Also, Herschel Walker out with a cryptic tweet. Will he run for U.S. Senate? And private toll lanes may soon be coming to I-285. Phil, Theron, and Kathy are here along with Martha Zoller. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Another shooting at Lenox Mall by teens has a security guard fighting for his life. A grocery store clerk shot and killed in DeKalb County over a mask. And a Holly Springs police officer shot and killed in the line of duty. Another violent week in Metro Atlanta as the national media focused on the crime wave hitting the city of Atlanta and the push for a new city of Buckhead. Theron, I'll start with you first since we didn't have you last week because of all the technical issues. You know, it's not the kind of national attention we want in Georgia's capital city. I want to get your take on all of this, but also the announcement that former Mayor Kasim Reed wants his old job back because he says he can fix the crime issue.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. And I want to start by thanking the Fox 5 production staff. They did the best they could to try to get me back up last week. I did launch an investigation. I think Phil Kent definitely had something to do with my feed and audio dropping. But we're going to wait to see how that investigation concludes, because I was getting ready to make a big announcement, Lori, about my political future. And I was going to make the announcement on Georgia Game, of course. But now, after a week, I am going to announce that I'm not going to seek the office of the mayor. I will not be a candidate. However, I will be very involved in who will be the next mayor of Atlanta. With that being said, as far as former Mayor Reed entering the race, I think the panelists did a wonderful job last week of sort of giving a very balanced overview of that. I think this race is wide open. He does bring a different element to the race, and we'll have to wait and see how that all shapes out. As far as the crime, Lori, I'm fed up. I've talked to you, I've talked to Kathy, I've talked to Phil, I've talked to Martha, Brian, BJ Pack, all of us who have been talking about this for months now. We've got to do something about crime in this city, and you can't blame it on one particular person or one particular office. I do think we need to support our Atlanta police officers. We need to get more officers on the street. We need to give them more resources, but also we got to make sure that we, everyone's got to get around the table, the DA, the sheriff, the mayor, the owner of Lenox Mall, all these restaurants, all these club owners. We got to get in a room and we got to figure this out, because this is terrible, and I think it's only going to get worse unless we figure out a comprehensive solution.
All right, we did want to mention that the Holly Springs police officer was killed in the line of duty. He was not shot. And Phil, I do want to continue on this topic because I talked to Senator Brandon Beach this week, who is sponsoring the City of Buckhead bill in the Senate. He says he's optimistic that he can get it passed out of the Senate as a general bill, but what kind of impact can a new mayor have on votes under the Gold Dome?
Well, I think that I was at first skeptical of the Buckhead cityhood movement, but I think it's got legs, and I think it's got a good chance in the legislature, where it has to go through in a 2-year process. Republicans have generally been sympathetic to any new city request if they meet certain criteria. And of course, you have to get a feasibility study by a university, and it has to meet basic requirements for services, et cetera, et cetera. I think that a new mayor is not going to really affect the cityhood movement. I have to laugh about Kasim Reed trying to tout himself as a crime fighter. I remember having the documentation on this show in his last term where crime, shootings were up, murders were up in various zones of the city. We can talk about that another day, but and I'm not surprised that, sad to say and maddening to say, that Atlanta is making the national headlines. It used to be New York, Chicago, Portland, Seattle. Now we're right up there with them, and it's very upsetting. And I hope the good thing that comes out of this mayoral campaign are concrete suggestions on what to do, and especially to support due process for any Atlanta police officer that's involved in a shooting.
Kathy, we have been talking about this crime issue and how out of control it is for weeks. I know Speaker Ralston's hearings are about to start, but Theron had mentioned that everybody should be involved in this. Should the governor step in now and do something before there are more shootings at Lenox, more people shot just because they're out jogging or pumping gas or just driving on the highway? Like, what more can the state do also?
I don't know exactly what more the state can do, except the governor has about $8 billion between a surplus and federal stimulus funds that he can spend at his own discretion. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about a police training center. The state of Georgia wants to pay for that and use that for multiple counties to come together for police and fire training. I think that would be a big relief from the city's budget, but also be a way that we could expedite increased training and better facilities for both the police officers in Atlanta, but from across the state and across the region.
Martha, what do you think? Should some of that money from the federal government be used for law enforcement?
Oh, I think it absolutely should. And if Atlanta is adjusted for their population, they have a higher crime rate than Chicago does right now. So that's a big problem. And as far as the mayor and having input in things, I think it's going to be very interesting to watch this race. I mean, Kasim Reed, you remember that picture of him standing in the road when the Michael Brown protests were going on, and he said, if you come in the road, if you block traffic, you are going to be arrested. And he did have some success in keeping it from being very violent in Atlanta during that time. So I'm going to be watching very closely. And yes, there is a role for the governor to play with these federal funds that are available.
That was a moment that we're not likely to forget in Atlanta. I remember it well, Martha. Theron, Kathy had mentioned this, but this week the Atlanta City Council delayed a vote on a new police training facility to be built by the Atlanta Police Foundation because of opposition to the idea. Groups who support defunding the police are saying, well, this isn't the answer. So I guess my question is, with escalating crime the way it is, what is the answer? I mean, this is a police training facility, and isn't that what both sides talk about when it comes to, more training on de-escalation?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I think that, we got to step back from this process. I was able to talk to a few council members this week about this legislation. Particularly, I talked to Councilwoman Joyce Shepard, who introduced it. And it was held, Lori, because they want to have more community input. I think Councilmember Jennifer introduced something that said, well, let's step back and let's have an opportunity for the community to discuss this. And there's a portion of this that goes into different counties where a lot of the folks who are protesting this idea is around the environment. And it's around trees, and I support that. But I do think, to your point, Lori, at a time when we know we have a shortage of officers, and more importantly, our fire academy in the city of Atlanta is closed for a lot of structural reasons, and the police academy is going to close in August because of structural challenges, then you got to build this new public training facility. And as Kathy mentioned, it's not just for Atlanta. You're going to be able to have other counties, fire and police. It's going to be a public safety facility. And then lastly, I'll say this. I'm all about peaceful protesting. I come from the John Lewis School of Politics. But when you start going to a council member's home, invading her privacy on private property, knocking at her doors, we just got to be very careful that this doesn't escalate into something worse than it already is. And so I do think there needs to be a conversation that is going to be had, and I think that'll be scheduled very soon.
Kathy, I see your hand up, but those protesters were pretty vocal, going and bold, going to Joyce Shepard's house.
Yeah, that's a scary thing for any public official, but I just wanted to make one note. The issue around this training center in particular is the location that's been selected at a piece of property that is in DeKalb County but owned by the city of Atlanta along Key Road. And people have been planning for a large regional park for years. And Atlanta owns significant acreage in Dawsonville and Paulding County that could be used for a regional training center without having the same kind of objections. And so I'm really hoping that the council puts the kibosh on using the old prison farm for this particular endeavor. But no doubt we need new training facilities, as do most jurisdictions around the state.
Martha, I've got about 20 seconds if you want to weigh in.
Well, I think it's going to be important for us to consider all ideas, but leadership is what's lacking here. And for whatever reason, it starts at the top. And this is one of the reasons why Mayor Bottoms is not running for re-election, and she'll have to take some responsibility.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. Coming up, Herschel Walker's cryptic tweet looks like he's one step closer to running for office in Georgia, and Phil might have some scoop. We'll discuss straight ahead.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Hey, what you hear there is Hulk. That's what I call it. You know, he's ready. I'm getting ready. And we can run with the big dogs.
Well, that's quite a tease. Showing a Georgia license plate there is Herschel Walker, hinting possibly that he's ready to run. Phil, I want to get right to you. What do your sources say? Will he get in the race to try and challenge Senator Raphael Warnock?
Laura, you may remember over a month ago on this show that I told you my sources down at Mar-a-Lago, Trump headquarters, were saying that he was getting ready to suit up and run. And I think that nothing has changed with this video. Now I'm going to tell you that I am 99% sure that he is going to make some sort of announcement in July, just like I said about a month ago. I predicted July, and those sources so far have been very correct. And of course, what he's looking at, he's aiming for U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock, who was up again. And I think that Herschel, they say, has been waiting because why have the left and the Warnock echo chamber go after him now? So, and you notice the Georgia license plate, as you mentioned. So he's back.
Darren, he'll have to get through a Republican primary, but with the kind of name ID that Walker has, should Democrats be worried?
Oh, God, you know, Herschel. I mean, Laura, you keep asking me about Herschel, and I'm going to say the same thing. I am a huge fan of the football player, the Hall of Famer, you know, the Georgia Bulldog, Herschel Walker. As far as a candidate running for U.S. Senate, I just don't believe the hype. You know, while he's, and I couldn't see the video, I guess he's revving up an engine with a Georgia license plate. I think the first thing Herschel Walker needs to do is make sure that he establishes a residence in Georgia. I think, you know, that's the first thing. I mean, I don't know if he even lives in Georgia full time. But look, if he has the support of former President Trump, Phil knows this and Martha knows this, that 80+% of Republicans still support the former president. That may do well for him, but ultimately I just don't see it happening. And if he does run, I don't think he'll get out of the Republican primary. And then lastly, I was with Senator Warnock this week in Washington, D.C. He's ready. He's battle tested. He's doing a phenomenal job, so he'll be okay.
Martha, I see you smirking.
Well, I got to tell you, I have to agree a little bit with Theron on this. I'm not sure if it's the best thing for Herschel Walker to be the candidate. I think he's probably more likely to get in than not. I'll defer to Phil on that and his sources. But I do get concerned about how he's going to run on issues and what he's going to talk about. And will it be more than just, I'll be a Republican vote in the Senate? So I think it's going to be a challenge for him. We're going to have a big primary. We know that already. Senator Warnock will probably be in the primary by himself. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Kathy, do you want to weigh in quickly?
Sure do. So here's an example of what Martha was just talking about. He's in a vehicle with Georgia tags that have expired and have $85 worth of fees due on them. If you're going to kick off a campaign and do a tease, you don't start it without paying attention to details like that. And that's the problem with Herschel Walker being a candidate. But I do love me Herschel Walker as a football player, but not as a senator.
All right, lots to discuss in the next few weeks on Herschel, but I want to move on. 3 members of Congress in Georgia's delegation voted against a bill awarding gold medals to police officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th. Congressman Jody Hice and Andrew Clyde, along with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Martha, what did you think of their reasons?
Look, I think it was a mistake in this particular case. I don't think it was the best thing for them to do. However, you've got to look at some overwhelming votes that have happened, and I know we're going to talk about them later. I think there's a lot more that brings us together than separates us. So we'll just have to see how this all moves forward, and I'd like to see more substantive votes being taken than just show votes, and that's what we need to move on to. We need to get the budget balanced. We need to get through and do other things. So I'd like to see some real work getting done rather than just show votes.
Kathy?
Hey, listen, I think there's bipartisan agreement on that. We have got to hold our politicians accountable for doing business, not playing politics. Anybody can cast no votes and have some specious reason for it. It's a lot harder to roll up your sleeves, do the work you need to do to get something passed, and step aside and compromise once you've gotten past that point.
Phil, moving on, a surprise apology this week from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene after she compared coronavirus restrictions to the Holocaust. Do you think this was sincere, and is it too little too late?
Well, as you may remember, I gave her some free public relations advice on this show, and I urged every politician to remember, do not compare anything to the Holocaust during World War II that cost the lives of 6 million Jews and others. That's just crazy to be making a comparison like that. And I think she realized it. I think it was a sincere apology, and both the right and the left get caught up in this rhetoric. In fact, I thought that maybe Theron and Kathy wrote that commendation to the Capitol Police, who were just laced with all this Democratic propaganda and rhetoric. But anyhow, I digress. I think that Marjorie Taylor Greene has learned a lesson on that.
Theron, you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, the Congresswoman is just horrible. She's an embarrassment to the state. I'm glad she apologized, but Lori, I mean, every week there's something that she's doing, and the Republicans just, not all, because I know Martha and Phil, not always agree with some of the things she says, but the majority of the Republicans that I hear from won't push back on her. So again, I don't want to waste any time talking about her on this show. I think she's an embarrassment. She shouldn't hold a seat, and what she's said now and previously, it's just horrible. So again, I don't want to waste any time talking about her.
All right, we'll leave it there, everybody. Thank you. Coming up, toll lanes on I-285 could ease congestion, but could also lead to controversy because of who will be building and managing them. We'll discuss the issue after the break.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Georgia's DOT is considering a plan to build toll lanes on I-285 funded and managed by a private company. Kathy, is this a good idea or bad?
I think it's a very bad idea. This is a 50-year contract to build and manage toll lanes. We don't have to do much in the building category of it, and we have funds to do that, and they'd be reimbursed from the use of the toll lanes. But giving a 50-year contract to a company to manage a piece of critical infrastructure and to charge what they want to do that is really not in the best interest of Georgians and those who pay for these highway systems, which is all of us. So I hope we don't do this.
Martha, there have been some other issues in other states with some of these companies going bankrupt because they haven't been able to get the money out of those toll lanes. Does this concern you, this possibility?
Well, there's always a possibility. I mean, that something like that can happen. But all in all, I think this is a good idea. I mean, I was a person that was totally opposed to toll lanes until I had to use them on a regular basis. And they saved me time and cost me a lot of money, but they still saved me time. So I think this is the right way to go. Obviously, there are still some details to be hammered out, but I think it'll work. And I think that it'll be good for traffic in Atlanta, just like the toll lanes have been on 85 and 75.
Theron, is this a good idea to have a private company fund these rather than taxpayers?
Well, to Martha's point, I think we got to wait to see more details. I mean, I actually understand where Kathy's coming from. I mean, she always does a phenomenal job of giving us sort of a historical point of view of this, and she's the transportation expert, not me. And then I also understand what Martha is saying. I think most folks who get stuck in traffic, who believe that we need a full, comprehensive sort of transportation plan, I kind of come down the middle on this. And so I think the devil is in the details. However, we all agree that we need to create more opportunities to reduce the amount of traffic and give people an opportunity to travel in their cars. And I think the state can generate some income from this if it's managed properly.
That's the key words there, managed properly. Phil, weigh in here.
Well, Georgia was behind 20 years ago when we were looking at population estimates and what to do with public-private partnerships and working on our highways and widening them and getting new ones. And so we're still catching up. I am totally in favor of this. Yes, we still have some details to iron out. I think we have the best Department of Transportation Commissioner in the country, Russell McMurray. I've spoken with him. I've spoken with DOT members. I think the plan is a good one. Other states have had success with these type of projects, and so I think the money, and we need the money, and I think it could be very successful. Georgia's population is going to continue to increase. It is going to be a hassle watching all that construction in future years on the interstates and dodging it, but I think it's time we did it.
Oh, there's always construction. Have you been on 400, 285 lately? All right, I want to move on to the issue of redistricting. Before the maps are drawn, lawmakers are gathering input from the public with a series of public meetings. But you can't take the controversy or the politics out of this process, can you, Kathy?
No, I'm afraid you can't. And again, this is one of those things where I'm hoping we're going to have some bipartisan agreement that the best thing for our democracy is for people who are elected to be elected in districts that are competitive. When you get a district that's 65, 70% populated with whatever party you are or a demographic that's like you're less inclined to pay attention to minority voices of any type. And so what I'm hoping is that people from both parties will demand that districts be drawn with less than 55% of that majority in any given district, so that we can get people debating issues as opposed to showboating, as we've discussed earlier.
Martha, a lot of the politicos pay attention to this process, but I'm not sure if the general public does. What are your thoughts on how this will all play out? This is a crucial year.
I don't think the general public does until the lines are already drawn and they find out where they end up. What's been amazing to me as a Politico has been that the people that are waiting to decide whether they're going to run based on where these lines are drawn. Now, that shouldn't surprise you, except that the process is so much later and that we're going to have just kind of an avalanche of candidates once all these lines are drawn. And I think it's going to be really fun to watch because there will be competitive districts and competitive races in places we've never had them before, up and down the ballot, and not just the statewide races in all the things they're talking about right now. So that's why I'm watching closely, because I've talked to at least a dozen people that are waiting to see how things turn out to decide what they're going to run for.
Absolutely. Phil, I got about 10 seconds.
Well, I think we need to remember that these are districts, both at the local, state, and federal congressional levels in Georgia. They have to be matched toward population. A certain amount of population has to be in there. That's why we're waiting for the numbers. But the Democrats kill me, because years ago they were all in favor of drawing maps that favored them, and now, oh, we got to be fair and be careful. Come on.
We'll be watching the issue here on the Georgia Gang. Thanks, everybody. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
Darren, you were robbed last week, so I'm starting with you.
Oh, thank you, Lori. You're so sweet. Thank you. First of all, I want to just wish everyone a happy Juneteenth. As we all know, it became a national federal holiday this week, a unanimous vote in the U.S. Senate, so I think that was definitely some bipartisanship. Also want to make a winner my good friend Kevin Gooch, who's the past chairman of the 100 Black Men of Atlanta. Did a lot of great jobs in his tenure, a lot of scholarships awarded, internships for a lot of young people. And then lastly, I want to offer my condolences to Dr. Isabella Jenkins of Clark Atlanta University. She's a graduate of Clark College in 1953, president emeritus, served Clark Atlanta for over 55 years and helped so many students like myself matriculate through that great university. So I want to offer my condolences to her family.
Absolutely. Martha, over to you.
Well, I want to say happy Father's Day to everyone. And I also, for my winner, we had overwhelming votes on Juneteenth. We had a 7-2 in the Supreme Court on a decision and a 9-0. I hope we're going to celebrate some of the things that we're agreeing on instead of picking on the one or two things that we don't. So that's my winner for the week. The loser is leadership in Atlanta. I mean, I'm an Atlanta girl. I grew up in Atlanta, and it's disappointing to me to see all the danger that's out there. And it's real, folks, and people have to work together on it. And finally, finally, just condolences to the family of Eliza Paris Harrison. She was the daughter of Trey Paris, who many of us know, who fought a valiant battle against cancer and has been a real advocate throughout the time that she has had this terrible disease. Rest in peace, Eliza.
Such a beautiful girl. I'm glad you mentioned that, Martha. Thank you. Phil, I got about a minute, 20 seconds.
Well, I've got a winner, and it's Keith Meadows, the chief of the South Fulton Police Department. This is a true crime fighter. He used to be over the APD's homicide unit. He is busting up gangs and human traffickers, and he's added to his force. And so this is a crime fighter we need to hail. And also another winner is a Democrat, Vernetta Nuridin. She voted to fire Rick Barron, the elections director of Fulton County. And guess what? The Democratic Party that put her in removed her because of that vote.
All right, Kathy, over to you.
Hey, I'll start with my loser, Attorney General Chris Carr, who signed on to the losing yet another Affordable Care Act lawsuit that the Supreme Court just overturned. So I hope he'll stop playing politics and get back to work. My winners are Congresswoman Nakima Williams and State Rep Matthew Wilson, both honored by Georgia Equality in this LGBT Pride Month of celebration.
All right, Theron, I'll let you get it in real quick. Theron.
Yeah, and guys, join me in wishing Lori a happy birthday. I know your birthday is on Saturday, but I know this will air on Sunday. So happy birthday, Lori.
Thank you so much
for
and thank you,
what you do
everyone.
for us
Happy birthday.
See you
every
next week.